Hello and welcome to this training session on the Accounts Receivable module. My name is Vinny and I'm a training manager here at PortPro. In this video, I'll be guiding you through a step-by-step process on how to bill effectively through the system. What's on the agenda? So first we're going to go through some basic setup. We'll go through the customer onboarding and highlight the specific fields and things you need to do to make sure that the billing goes effectively once you start in the AR module. Then we'll talk about some AR configurations, so specifically some settings. Then we'll jump into the system generated emails, so the actual settings of the email you will send that will include the invoice. Then we'll dive into the document designer, talk about how to create invoice designs and also the combined invoice design. Then we'll jump into the accounts receivable module and we'll talk about how to create an invoice, the billing filters and the custom views of the module, and then adding manual charges to charge sets. We'll also discuss bulk invoicing and pay, reviewing charges, combining the invoices, so creating one invoice with multiple charge sets. And then lastly, we'll touch on reporting. So key concepts, charge profiles. A charge profile is an individual pay item, such as base rate, fuel surcharge, or accessorial fee, that defines a specific component of the customer charges. A charge set is the combination of charge profiles that will undergo the approval process in order to create an invoice. Bulk invoicing is the approving and invoicing of multiple charge sets at once, while combining is connecting multiple charge sets into one invoice. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to go through is creating the customer. So first we're going to go to the Organizations tab here. In your system you may see Customers. But I'm going to select Organizations, and then I'm going to go to Organizations submodule. I'm then going to select Add New Organization. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I at least select that this entity is going to be a customer. Now this will allow me to use this entity as a bill to party. If I select anything else but customer, I won't be able to use this as a bill to party. Now you can select multiple different options, but as long as customer is set up, you're good to go. So first we're going to enter the company name. So we're going to call this test client. Then under the address, you can start typing in an address for the client. Now you want to make sure this is the bill to address. So I'm just going to do start typing. As I start typing the address, the system's going to look for the closest result based on what I'm typing in. So if I find what it is, I simply just select it, and the rest of the information such as city, state, zip, and country will fill in automatically. Now if I needed to add any additional info such as a suite number, or let's say I needed to add a PO box, I can click on Add Custom Address and then go to where it says Street, so the field here, and then I can add what I need to add. So I can do Suite 700, or let's say this is a PO box, so I can do PO box 12345. Then I'll just enter a zip here. You'll want to make sure you enter the zip associated to that PO box, and then hit Save Address. Okay. Now beneath that, you'll be able to enter information regarding the customer login. So some benefits the customers have while you're using PortPro is they can have their own customer portal where they can go in and see their bills and see their transactions per load. Now in order for you to enable that, you simply just need to add a admin login. So I'm just going to do test client add test123.com, and then I just have to issue a temporary password. So I'm just going to issue one here. I use this one here. And this will send them a login once you create the organization. Now, if you or the client is opting out of this, you simply do need to enter an email address, but it's just going to be a dummy email address. So it can just be a series of numbers, but it still has to follow the format of an email address. What's extremely important in this email section to fill out is the billing email. So the billing email is what the system will use to send the invoice out when it's created during your AR workflow or your billing workflow. So here I'm just going to enter tests. I'm just going to do this accounting at test123.com. Okay. Now you can enter multiple billing emails. Let's say there's multiple entities or multiple people you need to email at that company. Once you enter the email, hit tab. It'll create a grayed out box to show you the first entry, and then you can add the next one here. You can continue to enter as many emails as you need to. Okay. Now you notice there's a receiver email section here. This has to do more so with notifications to the customer, so operational notifications. This will only allow you to enter one email, but again, it's for operational purposes. So for your dispatch team or customer service, they'll have to enter the email address best suited for their notifications, for the customer's notifications. Okay. Beneath the email section, we have the payment section. This is where you'll enter information such as credit limit and account hold. So let's say I do work with a credit limit, I can enter that information here. And then if at any point I need to switch this customer off for any hold, I can just select yes, and I have control over it here. Now we'll talk about a setting that controls this so that it's automated based on the credit limit once it's exceeded. Okay. Now we'll scroll down a bit more. You do have contact information here that you can fill out. You have other preferences for the customers. But for billing purposes, the next big section is going to be the load charge combination and the payment terms, then the document types. So under load charge combination, this is where you can define how a customer's charge sets or bills are sent over if you combine them. So meaning if my customer sends me a bunch of orders, they tell me, hey, I want you to combine all of them at the end of the week. This is how you can define how they'll be combined. So the first is manually, which just allows you to manually select the loads you want to combine. They can be incomplete or they can be completed. By load allows you to combine by load type, so imports and exports. By day will allow you to combine anything that was completed for a specific day. Same thing for by week, but we're doing by a specific week. And then we have by reference number when all are completed. So what this will look for is that the loads are completed and that they also have the same reference number so that you can combine them together. This is extremely helpful for when you are billing a customer that has multiple orders, let's say under one PO number. If you enter that PO number into the reference section of each one of those loads, the system will look for that and combine only those together. Now the nice thing is if one of them isn't complete, let's say one's in transit still, but let's say it's an order of 5 and the other 4 are complete, the system will wait for that 5th one to be marked as complete in order for you to actually combine them together. And then the last one is all completed. And this is almost similar to manual, but it'll only allow you to combine anything that has been successfully marked as completed. Okay. I'm going to leave this as all complete. Then payment terms, this is where you'll define the terms for your customer, and this is where you'll enter that so it'll appear on the invoice. So you have the option of choosing invoice date or last day of the invoice month. If you use last day of the invoice month, it's going to be the 30th or 31st. If you use invoice date, it's going to be the date in which the invoice was created. So if I go here, I can enter 30 if it's net 30. If it's 60, 45 or anything else, I can just go in here and make the change. Okay. Now, lastly, it's the document type. So if this customer requires specific documents and you want to make sure that your billing is processed only when those documents exist in the load, you'll simply click on the field here and select the documents you need. So let's say I need proof of delivery, the in and out gates. Okay. And again, this controls the documents needed in order for billing to process an invoice. Now, once you've entered all of that information, I'm going to select the branch here. So if you have multiple branches, this is where you'll select what branch this customer belongs to. And you can select more than one. The last step is to click Add New Organization. Once you click Add New Organization, if I navigate over to the Customer tab here, I should be able to see my new client here at the bottom. And if I open them up, I'll see all the information I just entered. And then I also have additional tabs that I can navigate through and edit certain information. So like add documentation, maybe tax documentations, any geofencing, notes, people who work for the company, etc. Okay? So that's the first thing you want to make sure that you cover is the customer. The next thing I'm going to go through is the accounting settings. So for the settings, we're going to navigate to the gear here, and then we're going to go to accounting configurations under the accounting box. We're going to focus on the accounts receivable options here. I'm just going to show you where the options are. So this is where you can control specific functionality as to when you can bill. For example, if you only can bill when the loads are completed, that setting exists here. This is where you can also control the enforcement of an account hold. So if you want the account, a customer's account to go on hold if the credit limit is exceeded, that setting is right here, and I have it turned on. The way it works is as you're billing your customers, the credit limit's going to continue to go down and down and down unless they pay you for those transactions and you mark them as paid. If after you bill your customer, their credit limit goes below zero, the system will put the customer on hold. Okay, so that's how that works. But there's a lot of additional settings here to navigate through. The ones that are already set up is for the loads to be completed for a charge set to be invoiced. That's up here. You also have the allow rebilling of invoices to turned on, which will allow you to edit an invoice once it's been created. But the ones you may need to turn on are the credit limit and the required documents, which I have here. Another thing to note about required documents, if you leave that field blank, you'll still be able to bill your customer without a problem. It'll just simply not require any invoices to be present when your billing does the process. So basically, if there isn't any documents there, you'll be able to process the bill. So if you do have this on, and it only pertains to certain customers, you just need to fill out that information for those specific customers. Okay. So once you navigated through the settings and you selected what you needed to turn on, the next thing is the system generated emails. So that's also going to be under the settings. And we're going to come down here to system generated emails configuration. Now this is where you'll create the template that'll be used to send the invoices out to your customers. So you could differentiate the templates by branch if you have multiple offices or branches. Or you can leave this blank and it'll default for everything. Now we get down here to the actual email content. The first thing you'll need to do is enter the email from. If you have your domain already set up with PortPro, you can use any of the emails that you designated as the sender, and you can just simply add it here. Okay. Otherwise, you'll need to use the no reply alert that you currently see on the screen. Okay. For questions on how to get your domain set up, reach out to your implementation manager, customer success manager, and they'll direct you to the process on how to get that done. Beneath the email from is the email subject, and this is where you'll enter the subject line. Now you'll notice there's a few terms here that are started and ended with the ampersand, the @ sign. These are data points that the system is pulling for me to fill in that field. So anytime I create a bill, the system's going to add the customer name, the container number, and the invoice number. The way this works is you just type in the @ sign, and it'll pull down a menu for you to select specific data points you want to include in your subject line. Let's say I also want to do, let's do reference number. So you can add as many data points as you want, but best practice here is to build the subject as if it's a regular subject for an email. So however you send or however you set up the subject line for your invoices now, for whichever ones you invoice, just mimic it here and remember to add the necessary data points so the system knows what to pull. Okay. And the body of the email works the exact same way. You'll type in the body of the email, and then you can even copy and paste those data points here at the bottom and place them where you need to for the message. Then lastly, the CC. If you need these invoices to be sent to you or to any other party at your company, you can copy them in, and it works the same way as it did when we were entering the billing email. You type in the email, hit tab, and you'll have as many emails as you need to for the CC. Okay. But once this is all set, you'll hit Save Changes, and that'll save the template for you. Okay. Now the last thing I'll go through before we actually jump into the Accounts Receivable module is the Document Designer, which will be found under Account Setup, Document Designer. Okay. The next thing you'll do is you'll navigate to the Designer. And this is where you'll be able to edit the documentations that you're going to use. So you'll select the branch for the document if that pertains to you, but then you'll select the document type. So for billing purposes, the documents that we have here that you may need to look at will be invoice, combined invoice, and statement. And I'll show you that what those look like in a second. But let's talk about the invoice document. So with that document type, I'll see a preview here on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, it'll show me what I can edit. So for example, accent color and text color, if I click on the box, I can change it to what I need it to be. And then I have the individual sections. So I have the header. If you want to see which this is, you can just turn it on and off. And everything else part of that section will have its toggle. And again, you can turn that on and off. Okay. So along with the header, you have the invoice details, address, and then you have the order details. Now the order details, these are the specific references that your customers may need. So take your time here and pick the ones that you're going to most need, okay? Now if let's say there's a customer that will need, just to give you an example, voyage name. Let's say just one customer needs it. You can turn it on, and whenever that information is placed into the load, it'll transfer over to the document for that customer. Now let's say all my other customers, they don't need that. Don't worry. If that field is empty for your other customers, that section will not populate. It'll disappear almost like you never selected it. Okay. So the biggest thing to do is make sure you selected all the fields. And remember, for whatever fields your customers don't use, don't enter anything in there, and it'll disappear from the order details section. Okay. Now, there's additional fields here you can go through, like commodity, charge details, the note section, disclaimer, which is here. The disclaimer is nifty because this is where you can enter your legal information here, and it's just as easy as copy and pasting it directly. Okay. Now the last section is the watermark. So let's say you do send your customers draft invoices for approval. You can add a watermark to that document so that you can differentiate what's the actual invoice versus the draft. And you can change here at the bottom what the watermark says. Okay. Now, once you finish editing, you'll save as new configuration. The system will ask you, would you like to apply it to all your terminals? And you just simply select yes. Now, the same thing goes for your combined invoice. The biggest difference here is the statement. So whenever you send a combined invoice, the combined invoices will give you the details you see here, but a statement can go a little further and provide more information to your customers. So if you would like to include that, you just simply have to turn it on here. Okay. And then once you turn it on, you'll navigate to the statement and just make sure that all the information you need has been added. So same sort of layout, same way to edit. You just have to make sure that those documents are set up the way you need them to be. So for a recap, what did we cover? We set up our customer. We did our accounting settings. We set up our invoice template or email template for the invoice. And we made sure our documents are good to go. So when all that is said and done, now we're ready to bill. So let's jump into accounts receivable and billing. All right. So now we're in the accounts receivable module. What we need to do here is actually process the invoices. So let's first talk about the actual module and what you see here. So here at the top we have a bunch of different filters. Now we have two major filters, which is the unbilled load charges versus your billed load charges. The unbilled load charges will show you revenue that are in the uncompleted status, so either the load is pending or in transit. Completed status, so the load has been marked as completed. Unapproved, meaning billing has checked the transactions but there's still something that needs to be finalized in order to approve it. And then lastly is approved, ready to go, and this is where you can send your charge sets to either be combined or bulk invoiced. Okay. Then under your billed load charges, this is where you'll see all the revenue that's already been associated to an invoice. Now the subcards below will show you billed versus rebilling. Rebilling is anything that may have been finalized but you're currently editing. Now you have additional filters below, such as filtering by combination methods. You can also filter based on the selections here. If you've selected any one of these cards, so I'm going to do the drafted uncompleted, the filters here where my cursor is will change. So you'll have filters such as with docs, no docs, pending status, or in progress. But you also get here in the middle section filters based on customer. Okay. Now alongside the filters, you can also choose to locate a specific charge set using load ID, container number, reference number. You just simply need to type in that details here in the search field. Okay. Along with those filters, you have the more in-depth filters here on the side in the filter button. And this will allow you to further break down the view and get a little bit more granular. Okay. And there's a lot of filters you can choose from. Just to give you an example, we can go off of customer, we can go off of pickup location, delivery location, reference number, and much more. Okay. You can also edit your columns, as well as edit the position of the columns. So if I click on margin, let's say I want it closer to the front, click and hold. Let's say I want to put it over here by customer, I can move that around. Best practice is to take your time and set up your dashboard like you need to, and make sure you have the columns that you also need to see turned on. Anything that's turned on will have the toggle to the right. Anything that's off will be to the left and grayed out. Okay. Now, if you need to create custom views, you can absolutely create them here. Now, the way it works is you'll need to just create the filters that you need. So let's say I wanted all completed loads for, let's do my customer. I can also click the customer here, but I'm just showing you from here. I'll do cargo. hit apply. And then the last step will be to click this plus sign here at the top and save the view. So I'll do cargo complete. I can set it as a default if this is the first thing I want to see when I come into the module. Otherwise, I can leave that off. Hit create view. Now if I come up here to the top, I'll select one of these views here and then go back. Now if I select it, it'll automatically filter to that view. To turn off the view, I simply can just click the X. All right. So let's now talk about the process of completing a bill. So the way that works, I'll select completed loads here. This is where you'll need to start to process your bills. Okay. Anything that's completed will be under this card, and you'll see those loads here at the bottom. Now the status will be drafted for these. So the first thing you're going to want to do is review the loads. So you can click into the charge set number here, and it'll open the load board for you. Now from the load board, this is where you'll be able to see the charges. So it'll directly take you to the billing tab. And this is where you'll review what's being charged. And you can make any changes you need to. Okay. From here, you'll also have access to the Documents tab. And this is where you can review things like proof of delivery, in-gate, out-gate tickets, etc. If there's any documentation that's needed for this client, you'll see a red box that says the name of the document and required. Otherwise, it'll look like this. So far, this customer is good to go document-wise. Another way to view your documents is here through the summary where my cursor is. If I scroll down just a bit, you'll see a Documents box, and it'll show you what documents are there. If I hover over the name of the document, I can see a small thumbnail, but if I click on it, it'll allow me to zoom in and navigate through the document and confirm all the details are good. Okay. Now let's say for this one we're missing some fuel. How do I add the charge? You can click on Add Charge and just add what is missing. So I'll just do fuel surcharge. Then I'll do percentage. And then we'll do 15%. Once I enter that information, I click anywhere outside that cell, and that charge will be added. Okay. Now, once I finish processing this, there's a few things I can do. Let's say I'm waiting for some approval for some charge. I can click on the unapproved button here. This will send the load to the unapproved section, but that'll indicate that I already reviewed this charge set. I can select Approve. This will move the charge set to the approved box. And from there, that's where I can bulk invoice, and I can also combine invoices. Lastly, I can choose to click Approve an Invoice. Now what this will do is this will automatically approve the charge and create the invoice all at once. So for my customers that want me to bill immediately as soon as the load is done and send the invoice, I might want to use that Approve an Invoice function so I can quickly just process the charge set and send it over to my customer. Okay. Keep in mind when you approve an invoice, you can't later on, let's say, combine it with another charge for that customer. This strictly just creates one invoice for that load that you cannot later combine. Okay. So let's say I want this to be included in my bulk. I'm going to select Approve. Now when I select Approve, the Add Charge button gets grayed out, and I can't make any changes. But if I do need to make changes, what I can do is I can select Unapprove, and that'll open the charge again, the Add Charge button. Okay. So I'll select approve here. As I approve charge sets, they'll disappear from the menu here. Okay. Now let's say for this one, I follow the same process. Looks like this one's good to bill. But for this one, I'm going to select approve an invoice just to show you what that looks like. So what this does is it approves it, moves it over to the invoice status, and my email template that I created earlier will populate here, and I can send the invoice out. Okay. Now I don't need to email it. So let's say this customer has a different way of receiving invoices. I can just simply hit cancel, and I'm done. Okay. Now for this one, let's say I reviewed it and checked it. It was a part of a series of invoices or charge sets I was looking into. The other way I can do an approval is I can do it by clicking on the checkbox here and marking approve. Okay, let me do that again. I'll move this over to unapproved so you can see it. So I moved it over to unapproved. Now it's in the unapproved box. I click here and the options are back. I also have additional options like adding notes, adding charges, adding documents, downloading invoices. I can do that from here as well. But I'll select approve. And now everything is in the approved section. Okay. Now from here, this is where I'll do my bulk invoicing. Okay. So bulk invoicing, the way it'll work is you'll select all the transactions. You'll again get the toolbar down here, and you'll select approve an invoice. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about the functionality you have here. So there's 3 buttons here. The first one is to download. This will allow you to download the draft invoice. The second is to email. This will allow you to email the draft invoice. And lastly, this clipboard is a quick summary of what you just approved. So it'll give you details on the load and the charges you approved versus the expenses and the driver pay. Okay, so this is a helpful tool to just kind of finalize your work and make sure what you're invoicing is correct. Now I want to show you a combination as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my uncompleted and just close out one of these loads just so we have it available, so I can show you how to combine. So bear with me one moment. We're going to use this one. We'll close it out. Okay. Now if you notice, this was in the drafted, but now since I completed it, we moved it over to the completed section. Okay, let's make sure we have some charges here. Looks like we don't. No problem. We'll add some. Cool. Awesome. So let's go ahead and approve this. Now we'll come over to the approved, and now let's create some invoices. So I'll select all of them here and hit approve an invoice. So what the system will now do is it'll take me over to the invoice recap window. And this is one of my last opportunities, I should say the last opportunity to double check everything before I actually create invoices. So if everything looks good, I'll confirm the invoice date to make sure that's the date I want it to reflect on the document. And then if I want to combine, looks like these cubs can combine. A little bit about some other rules when you combine. The customer has to match and the net terms has to match. Okay. Net terms usually is not a problem because that's usually going to apply for that customer throughout all their loads. But for those scenarios where it differs, this looks for making sure that all the invoices are going to have the same net term before combining. So to initiate the combination, you'll click on Combine Chart Sets for Invoicing here at the bottom. And if the system finds loads that it can combine, it'll do so and it'll create one entry here. So as we can see here, we have one line item with 2 charge sets, and this is the total. Okay. If there's any caveats, so like let's say there's some exceptions, some loads that are probably exceptions to the combination rule, you'll see it here and you'll see an explanation. But if you combine the ones that you're looking to combine, you're good to go. Now I'm going to turn this off because I want to show you something when it comes to invoicing multiple charge sets for the same customer. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just bulk invoice. So bulk invoice means we're just making a bunch of invoices at once and sending them out to the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and select create 3 invoices. You're going to see 3 notifications here that invoices were created, and now you're taken to the email template. Okay. Now the first email is going to be for my Cubs account, and the second is for the MBUSI. Okay. Now what you'll notice is this top one has some extra check boxes that the bottom one doesn't have. So what are these? Because we're sending this customer 2 separate invoices, the system gives me the option of either sending each invoice on their own email, which is here, or sending them both together on the same email and including a statement. So that my customer has a statement, they can review that statement to see the invoices that they're included and potentially pay off using that statement. Okay. So along with combining, if you bulk invoice for the same customer, you have the option of sending all the invoices in one email or sending them separately, each in their own email. Okay. But once you're ready to send, you'll hit send and you're all done. Otherwise, you can hit close. And then if we come over here to the build section, you can download the invoice or email it out from here. Okay. Now, if I wanted to view and filter my view here of those invoices, I can click filter and I can select the invoice date of today. Hit apply, and I'll be able to see everything that I invoiced for today. Okay. Now I want to talk about rebilling invoice and also kind of show you a different way where you can download and email the invoices. If I click on the invoice number next to that charge set, it'll open this invoice window. Now I'll again get the download and the email button here, but this time it'll actually send real invoices, not drafts. So if you ever need to resend the email out again, you can do that from here. Or if you need to download a copy for whatever reason, you can also do that from here. Now to void, the void button will be here at the bottom. If you select it, the system will ask you to provide a reason for it, and it'll move this transaction to the voided report. And I'll show you where that is in a second. Okay. For my QuickBooks users, if you void using and you're using QuickBooks Desktop, you will need to void in the QuickBooks Desktop as well. For my online users, if you void from here, it'll void automatically in the online portal. Okay. Now the other option you have is to rebill. Now what rebill will do is that will allow you to edit the invoice once it's been created. So let's say you have a transaction that you needed to add an additional chassis day. So let's say this one here. If your customer says, hey, can you actually edit the invoice? I don't want to get another invoice with a dash on it. Just go ahead and edit the one you sent. You confirm that that's good. You haven't received payment on it. What you can do is hit rebill. It'll open up the invoice. So now I can click on the charge set. The add charge button is available, and I can go in here and make the changes. So let's say this should actually be 3 days. I make the update. Save it. Now I can choose to click invoice here. If I do so, it'll open the template and I can send the email. Okay. The other thing I could do, let me just click rebill again, is I can skip clicking it here. I can close, confirm the changes are made here, and then hit invoice. This will skip over the email template notification, and I can just choose to download or email from here. All right. Let's say you have a customer that you needed to create an additional invoice because maybe there was charges you missed, or there's per diem, or whatever it may be. You can select an invoice or the charge set. Let's say we're going to add it to this one. And I can create an additional charge set by clicking on Add Charge Set. This will create another field where I can add the bill to information for this customer. And then just start adding the charges. So let's say this is per diem. And I'll do per diem here. Per day, we'll say it's $250. Now once I add it here, I just follow the steps I went through previously to approve this. The benefits of doing this is now you have an invoice or a charge set that falls under the same load, so the margin and everything is recorded here, and then you have a dash one to help your customer differentiate the invoice, but also be able to see that it's actually associated to another load that they paid before. Okay. If you need to delete this chart set, you can click on the three dots here and remove it. All right. So that's the process of billing. Recommendation is to take your time and do and close out some loads in the system. And also rebill and see what the voiding option does. Okay. But this system is very powerful in the methods in which you can send a bill to your customer. All right, so the next thing we'll talk about is applying payments, what that looks like. And then we're going to close out on some reports that are here. So applying payments and credits. So you'll select the module here, and to apply payment, you'll fill out the form or the fields here at the top. So I'll select the customer. The system will populate all invoices for that customer. I'll select the payment date. Let's do 8 a.m. And then I'll enter a transaction or a check number. So let's say this was a transaction I got via ACH. I'll just do the ACH transmission number. And then I'll select how I received the payment. Was it cash, check, credit card, direct deposit? So we're going to do here direct deposit. And we'll say this was added to the checking, and then it was via ACH. Okay. Now you can add additional notes here. For some users, this may look a little bit different. This account is connected to QuickBooks, so there's a lot more additional fields. For those that don't have that connection yet, or have a different connection, you may just see only these fields here at the top, these four. Okay. Now once I've entered that information, I can choose to enter any documentation, such as a picture of the check or a file showing the payment. I can add it here. Now to close the transactions, you can choose to filter by which transactions you need to find. You can also search the board by entering, let's say, reference numbers or load IDs here. Or you can just scroll to the bottom to see the oldest and start from there. Now the way you apply the payment is you'll check the payments you want to apply. Here under the apply button, you'll see the total. If you need to make any changes, so let's say this transaction here should actually be 500, you can click right in there and type in 500. And then once you're done, you'll click apply, and it'll allow you to apply those payments. If you have any issues with sync, you'll see that error populate here. Okay, syncing has to do with the transmission of the QuickBooks information. Okay, but once you've hit apply, you're done with the payment, and that's recorded at the load level. You just have to make sure that whatever you do banking wise is done separate. The system is only good for recording the transaction and confirming that payment has received, or adding the details of the payment in the load so you can see that it was received. Okay. So let's go ahead and exit out of here. And now let's talk about reporting. So the first report we have here is invoices. Now this report will give you details on every single invoice you have created in different statuses. So here under 62, I have $211,000 worth of open invoices, so invoices that haven't been paid yet. Here, these are the invoices that I'm rebilling. And if you notice, if I click multiple filters here, those filters will stay on. I have to make sure I deselect the one I don't need and just have the one I need selected. Then I have my partially paid filter. So these are loads that have been partially paid, but there's a balance due. And then here are my invoices that have been closed out and paid. And then lastly, the voided invoices. So remember, when you void an invoice, it's recorded still in the system. This is where it goes. Okay. Now you can export this information into a QuickBooks CSV or a regular CSV. And again, you have filters and columns so you can edit the view. Right? And now the last report is the aging report. Now here under the aging report, you'll be able to see all your outstanding invoices from 0 to 30 all the way to 120 days plus. Now you can select, we'll do the 60 to 90, and it'll show you the list of customers. If you select the name of the customer, it'll actually show you all the open invoices. This is a very helpful tool because you can also download this information as a PDF or a CSV and send it out to your customer. Okay. You can also choose from the drop down here, and it'll show you all the information for that customer as well. Or you can keep it under total outstanding. Select the customer here, and it'll give you everything. All right. Well, that concludes this training session on the accounts receivable module of the system. Again, take some time to practice closing out loads and going through the billing workflow. If any questions do arise, please feel free to reach out to your implementation manager or customer success manager, and they'll be more than happy to assist. But thanks for watching.